they asked me to concentrate on the smaller boats, but I can't talk about my boats without putting in bigger ones as well. So I'll first tell you about the boats that I've built, the boats that I've owned, and then I'll go into this. I'll do a breakdown of the smaller boats through to 20 feet, and then swing through the bigger boats through to 70 feet. And then I'm going to finish off with a section about Anthony Stewart's round the world voyage in an open boat. And that was my first boat. My dad built it. That's me in the front. I was 5 years old at the time. I didn't even get to drive it before it got destroyed. And it's got to be one of the few boats in the world that was destroyed against the garden wall while in the water. My mom's boss lived on the other side of the lake from where we were, or his mother lived the other side of the lake. This is where I lived. And he wanted to get across to his mother's house, and he borrowed my boat. It had an outboard motor. He had a broken right arm. He was steering with his left hand. He arrived at her house on the other side, where the garden wall was right on the edge of the water. He went to close the throttle, and he said he opened it. And he hit the wall going flat out. And that's the last that we ever saw of my boat. My dad was a provincial champion Flying Dutchman. I can remember him when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I was watching the provincial championships, and he and his mate, my dad was light and the mate was heavy, and in the strong winds, the other guy was on trapeze and my dad helmed, and in the light winds it was the other way around. Well, I was on the bridge of the yacht club watching them coming down, and they were leading the fleet by maybe 100 yards. They capsized right in front of us, just as dramatically as I capsized today. And my dad was on trapeze, and he got flung up to 2/3 of the way up the mainsail. And he ran back along the mainsail. They got the boat back up before the next boat caught. And he always said to me, "You don't know how to sail your boat until you know how to capsize it." Meaning, because I was always scared silly of capsizing because I didn't know how I was going to run the boat. And that was his point. You've got to learn how to capsize it, so you learn how to right it, and then you lose your fear of the boat. That little boat I capsized today, I can sometimes capsize it 10 times in one day. And it's just that type of boat. And well, I'll talk a bit more when we get to that boat. When I was a teenager, this is what I sailed, and that's my one up there. Cotton sail. The boat was rotting away in somebody's garden, and I needed a boat. And I swapped it for a radiogram that my dad had. The older people remember radiograms with a turntable and a radio with tubes in it and all the rest. That's what I swapped the hull for, and then I had, in fact, my dad's Flying Dutchman partner made the mast for me, and then I did everything else, and I had those cotton sails that were really awful, but still got a tremendous amount of fun out of the boat. And these are all the same class. That guy there, at that stage, I think he's around 15 or 16 years old. He's just recently launched a 55-foot boat that I designed and he had built. And this was my first effort at boat design. Catamaran, I had no intentions of becoming a boat designer. I wanted to build a catamaran, and there were molds in Cape Town for the paper jet Australian catamaran. I was going to rent the molds, laminate hulls for myself, put plywood decks on, build a catamaran. And I just got married, and my boss sent me away to Windhoek in Southwest Africa, now Namibia. There's nothing to do there at night. And I ended up in the newsagents, And there was a magazine, Australian sailing magazine, and there was an article about a boat builder who had designed his own catamaran. And I thought, well, if somebody else can do it, so can I. So I spent my nights designing a boat. And then when I got home, I built it, and I raced that, and I surfed it. And it was a successful boat, very fast, but I never did turn it into plans that I would be able to sell. Then this is 1976. I started building this boat, which is actually a Van der Stad design. But the Van der Stad design was 30 feet, and we were going to build it to sail in the Cape Toria race. After I bought the plans, I found out that the minimum waterline length for the race was 30 feet, not the overall length. So I contacted Van der Stad and said, can I blow this boat up 10%? And Van der Stad said yes. But then they had a fleet of 125 boats in the Cape Toria race. And suddenly there was rumours that they couldn't manage any more boats and they were going to increase the minimum size limit. So I contacted Van der Stad again and I said, I've made the frames, can I space them out another 10%? And Van der Stad said yes, and he designed the rig, the new sail plan, and he designed the keel and the structure. And I designed the interior, and I redesigned the deck, and I launched the boat. But that got me interested in boat design, and that was when I actually I enrolled with Westlawn and started studying my correspondence with Westlawn. The guy who bought that boat from me sank her. Totally stupid. He left her anchored in a lagoon about 70 miles from Cape Town. And he left her there for 6 months, totally unattended. And she chafed through her anchor rode in a big storm, went onto the beach. They pulled her off the beach, they sailed her back to Cape Town. And halfway down, there's an island where they anchored for the night, and they found that the rigging was all loose. And didn't think, now why is the rigging loose? They just tightened it up. And the next day they carried on sailing down, and they were lucky they had a following wind all the way, light breezes. And they got to Cape Town, which has very seldom got light breezes. The boat heeled over and the whole bottom fell out. The keel took the whole bottom out of the boat because they'd broken the back of the boat, which was very upsetting. And the reason that I sold that boat to him was I had just won this design competition that was run by Cruising World magazine. I was about 40% of my way through my studies at Westlawn. I didn't really know that much about boat design yet, but I was starting to figure it out. And I decided to draw a design for this competition. And it was the first full design I'd ever done. And I was very, very surprised when I got a letter from him to say that I'd won the competition. My wife worked across the road from me, and I phoned her and I said, I need to meet you at lunchtime. We met and I gave her the letter, and first words she said was, well, I suppose Tiny is for sale, which was the previous boat. And I said, why? And she said, because no self-respecting yacht designer is going to sail a boat designed by somebody else. And so Tiny went on the market and we built this boat. And she turned out to be very, very fast. And I got a reputation with this boat of being a very hard sailor among my crew and among the general population around South Africa, around Cape Town. And I got that from my dad because he sailed boats very hard, doesn't back off much. And as an example, there was one race we were doing, it was a 140-mile weekend race. And the wind was blowing pretty hard, but that big chunk of granite there, Table Mountain, and it's attached, it's got 12 peaks running down southwest from there called the 12 Apostles. Those mountains play havoc with the wind. And if you've got 25 knots out at sea, you might have nothing next to that mountain, or you might have 50 knots. and there's no judging which of the two is going to happen. We're sailing in this race, and there were 4 or 5 clubs that take part, and you go around a mark at each of the other clubs, and you finish back at your own club where you started. And we rounded the last mark, and there were 3 Lavranos designs ahead of me, same length as my boat, but they had to give me quite a bit of time. And they were 20 minutes ahead of us, and I said to my crew, we're going to beat those guys across the finish line. And they said, you'll never do it. So, well, we had about 20 miles to go, and we had to come and sail alongside a mountain, and then there was a 90-degree turn around a point, and then there was this long reach, a close reach, in the lee of those mountains, and it came around the corner, and there were white squalls. And the crew said to me, what head sail do you want? How many reefs do you want? I said, no, we're going as we are. We're carrying #1 heavy Genoa and full mainsail. Pretty much the sails you see there on the boat. And they said, how are you going to do that? I said, you guys all sit along the rail there, and you tell me when we're about to get hit by a white squall. And between squalls we had 25 knots of wind, and in the squalls we had 55, 60 knots of wind, and we carried full sail. And I reached in the lulls, and as the squall hit, I turned and ran off. We were doing 14 knots in the lulls and 18, 20 knots in the gusts, but across the course. So we sailed like this, and the whole time watching those 3 Lavranos boats ahead of us. We caught them all before the finish line, and they didn't tell us the results of the race until the prize giving the following weekend. And the race record had been broken. It was previously held by Voortrekker 2, which is a BOC 60. It was, I think, about 18 hours or something like that. The record was broken by a Southwell 64 ULDB. And then, they gave the times for the various boats finishing, and we finished 56 seconds slower than the 64-foot ULDB did. We were on a 34-foot boat. And after that, my reputation in Cape Town changed dramatically. And then the guy who bought that boat off me put a junk rig onto it. And it's now world cruising with a junk rig. Then I sailed the 1993 Cape Toria race on a Shearwater 39, which was owned by the guy who's now a good friend of mine, entertainer from South Africa. But he wasn't a very brave sailor. And when I joined the crew, I said to them, are we racing or are we cruising? They said, no, we're racing. So I said to the owner, he wasn't skipper, he had a professional skipper on the boat. And I said, you know that you're going to just be nothing but a crew on your boat. You're going to have no say in the running of your boat. And he said, no, that's the way he wants it. Well, all the way through the race, he couldn't sleep at night because he was so petrified about the speed we were doing with this cruising boat. And about the 3rd or 4th night, I nicknamed him Jackrabbit because he would keep popping up and beg us to put in a reef or take down the spinnaker. We're sailing 35 knots with a big, big spinnaker on that boat. And then he sat the whole night just thinking out nicknames. And the next day he said, okay, I've got nicknames for all of you. My watch partner was Cowboy, and I was Dr. Dix. He said, I'm not going to tell you now why, but you'll find out one day. And he said he could tell, his berth was under the cockpit, he said he could tell who was helming the boat just by the feel of the boat. And anyway, we did quite well in the race. And a few months later, we were back in Cape Town, and there was a prize giving for the local yacht club. And he called me and he said, are you coming to the prize giving? I said, yes, I'll be there. He says, good, I'll be the dinner speaker. And halfway through his speech, he stopped. He's telling the people about this trip to Rio and back. And he stops and he points to me and he says, "That man there," he says, "he's one of the best sailors I've ever sailed with, but I will never sail out of Table Bay with him again." And he said he named me Herr Doctor because I was expelled from the Gestapo for cruelty. This boat, because of that, I didn't enjoy treating the owner of a boat like that. But it was, we weren't sailing in this race to cruise. We were sailing to race. So during that race, I started designing a boat for myself for the next race. Now I get seasick, and the Shearwater is a very comfortable boat, quite beamy, but it's heavy enough to be comfortable. So this one had to be narrow. I needed to be very light. The Shearwater is 9 tons displacement. This one is 4 tons displacement. So it's a slim boat to make it comfortable. And that has made it very, very fast. We've had that boat up to 22 knots a number of times. And that's the boat that we capsized 3 years ago in the Atlantic. We took it over to 160 degrees. And the boat is due to do the Cape to Rio race again at the end of this year. It's a lovely boat to sail. It's my favourite boat. And it's wonderful to sail a yellow monohull that's called Black Cat. Confuses everybody. Now this is the one that I've got at the moment. It's 13 foot 4 inches, I think. And it's a lot of fun to sail. Very fast. I've had it well over 20 knots a number of times. And some of you today got to see at very close quarters just how suddenly things can happen on a skiff. And Paul, are you here?
I was on the
Oh, well, thank you for returning my burgee that ended up in the other boat. I was flying, I was passing a boat coming into the mark, and I was actually contemplating how I was going to jibe around this mark at high speed with dignity, and suddenly the wind sucked and the boat went down to leeward and I got sucked off the boat by the high speed. Boat went the other way. It hit, was it a Drasker? I don't know what it was that it hit. But anyway, then the boat did something it's never done before. It moved away from me and I was swimming after my boat, and it shouldn't have to do that. And then once I got it righted and I was sailing again, my trapeze wires were hanging, swinging in the breeze. I thought, how did that happen in a capsize? Well, they hooked on the fairlead, the stern fairlead of the other boat, and they broke the... But anyway, that's the prototype of that boat, and we're now up to about 120 of them around the world. And I also have the skin-on-frame kayak, which I didn't build, and I have the touring canoe, which I did build. This is the Lynnhaven 16 touring canoe. Okay, now on to the boats. I'll just go through them from smallest to biggest, and I won't bother going through all the specifications. You can read them if you want. This is a fun little boat. It's really intended as a yacht tender, but I've sailed them a few times, and it's a fun little boat to sail. But it doesn't like anything over about 20 knots. It's starting to get overpressed. Works very nicely as a tender. Copycat, designed for children. And you really need to see this next to an Optimist to see just how tiny this boat is. It's deceptive in photographs. But although I designed it for children, the owner of that boat says that he can sail on it with his 2 kids. So 1 adult and 2 kids can actually sail on the boat. This one here is in California. This Argy 10 is really a bigger version of the Dixie dinghy. Carries more people. It's suitable for a tender on bigger boats. Challenger 13, lap straight plywood, a bit more complicated to build, needs a bit more skill. You've got them in all sorts of odd places in the world. This one is in Florida, that's not odd, but this one here is Latvia. And we've got these boats being built in all over the world. The Argy 15 is our most popular design, and I don't even know how many of those have been built, but it's in the thousands. Because it's been published in magazines and newspapers where I get no control over the numbers. But the sales that we've recorded ourselves is probably 800 or 900 boats. The paper jet, that's what I was talking about. How did that get in twice? No, it didn't. Okay, it's a stitch and glue boat built from a kit or from plans, and my hull is 94 pounds. You can't get lighter than that except by going to carbon sandwich. And the boat, you can see there's no bow wave. The boat doesn't create a bow wave that you have to climb over to get the boat on the plane. It just gets faster and faster. There's no hump to climb over. So it planes very easily. We have 3 rigs for it. This is the big rig. You can see it's got the fathead mainsail. And that's there. You can just see where the mast spinnaker is there. Then this is cat rig with the mast in the forward position. This is the mast in the aft position. You add the jib, but it's the same mainsail as that. So we've got 3 rigs with it. Did he Sport 15? This was a guy an Aussie. He wanted me to design a bigger version of the paper jet for him, which was going to be called the Paper Falcon. And then he told me one day that he was planning to take his wife and 2 friends sailing for picnics to an island off Hampton, where he likes to go, and they're going to have a cooler boxes with beers and things. And I said to him, "You want to do that in a big paper jet?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "No, you're not going to do that. You're going to scare the pants off your wife. She'll never want to sail with you again." And he saw the sense of it, and he said, "Can you scale down the mini transat hull for me and turn that into a dinghy?" And this was the result. And it's a plywood boat. You look at that shape there. It's a really nice shape that these boats have got, and it's also very, very quick. We can be sailed with the bulb to make it into a small sport boat, or you can sail it without the bulb and twin trapezes to make it an exciting dinghy. And this is, let's see if I can make this video work. There we go. It's actually a video, it doesn't want to play. But the video is then sailing this boat in 30 to 35 knots of wind with 1 on trapeze. And they're absolutely flying. Just a pity it won't play. Right? Let's try the interval. My glasses.
Skipped ahead. Oh, there you go.
Unfortunately, they didn't record their speed, so I don't know what speed they got. But you look at that bow wave. You look at that bow wave going past there. They are flying. I've recently been commissioned to do an adaptive version of it, So this is for handicapped sailors. Can be sailed with one handicapped, one able-bodied, two handicapped sailors. So the seats can come out, one or the other. It's got a smaller rig, it's got shorter bowsprit, shorter mast, same size jib, and just generally depowered. And it will only be sailed with the bulb. And the controls mostly go to both seats. You can see here, this is spinnaker retriever line, that red line. So it goes past both seats, so either person can handle it. The main sheet is double-ended. The one end goes here to the skipper, and the other end goes to the crew. This jib sheets can be routed across to there. Spinnaker sheets can go to either. So it's very versatile. So you had a question?
Yeah, how heavy is the bulb?
The bulb is 70 kilograms, 150 pounds. Yeah, anytime you've got a question, just stop me. I'll be 15, there's somebody who's about to start building one over here. As I said, it's our most popular design. So I never intended it as a powerboat. This guy here, he put a 40 horse motor on it. With a center console, and he gets the boat up into 25 knots. It's a 3-in-1 dinghy. And you can see here, it's a big boat. But that boat you can sail it as a docile dinghy, or you can get some fun out of it. There was a guy sailed on the lake there where I grew up, and he would race the fireballs with that boat, and he could hold a fireball with it. I'm going to be building one of those to take to the wooden boat show next year. The canoe, you saw that already, is one of the boats that I built. It's a nice little touring canoe. And this boat we took to this is my daughter's fiance, and he commissioned me to design this boat for him. He's a fisherman, and he built it. Never built a boat before. Took it to the wooden boat show last year, and he got the runner-up prize for it. He was very chuffed, and he has now commissioned me to draw a 26-foot mini sport fisherman for him. He's got at the moment he's got a 23-foot fiberglass fishing boat, and he wants to replace it with a wooden one. This little boat is surprising. It was commissioned by a guy who wanted to sail around the world. He wanted to just drop out of society, and it's a minimal boat, it's a tiny boat, but so it had to be very seaworthy. And before he got around to even start building it, his father caught up with him, lugged him off into the corporate world, and he was lost. But this particular one was built in Germany, and he cruised it to UK and back, and he said that little boat loves to sail at 5 knots. He said it's surprising at how fast it is.